Hey guys, this is Nick. Welcome to StrangeSpotting. So, I was working on a very intriguing video analysis, but then I stumbled upon this picture online. It surfaced on Reddit about a week ago, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind ever since. So I decided to put that video analysis on hold for a moment and get down to business with this incredible picture. And the reason why I chose to prioritize this is that we may be looking at either one of the greatest photographic hoaxes of all time, or the first in-focus, well-exposed, highly detailed, close-up photograph ever released to the public of a Bigfoot face. Brace yourselves, guys, because this could be a very big deal. The furthest back I could go in tracing the source of this image is a Facebook profile called Colton Squatch Watch. The photo was posted on June 23rd, 2022 with the short and, dare I say, cryptic text. Can't get much clearer than this. The only comment as of today is the one I posted, asking for some background information which I'll share with you as soon as this gentleman replies. As you can tell, the original photo has a great deal of red in it, which could be a very good sign in favor of its legitimacy because, as I'm sure many of you already know, very old photos undergo a degradation due to the heat and UV rays, which causes the chemical pigments used in the photographic process to fade and shift towards a reddish tint. The high amount of red in this picture could indicate that the original photo is very old, or that who forged this image had the precise goal of making it look old to deceive its intended audience. Regardless, what I'm most concerned with at the moment is to show you that I didn't alter the photo in any way besides a slight hue-specific desaturation, a moderate increase of brightness and decrease in contrast, and a bit of overall desaturation and increase in vibrancy. The purpose of these operations was to let more details emerge. For full disclosure, I posted a more edited version of this photo on Instagram a few days ago, but that's not the version I am using for this analysis. The nature of an image versus that of a video implies fewer possibilities. What we're looking at is either a fabrication aimed at hoaxing the Bigfoot or paranormal community, or the real deal. In the first case, this could be either an AI-generated image or the result of photo editing. Therefore, I will consider the three options and assign an equal probability to each. Alright, let's cut to the chase. I am quite a bit skeptical of the idea that this could be artificial intelligence, and I'll explain why. This face has an astounding level of detail and complexity, and this could be an indicator of this not being an AI-generated image. The creation of human faces is delegated to a specific subset of AI software called adversarial networks. This paradigm involves two different neural networks competing with each other. One is appointed with creating faces from a database of real images, the other with discriminating between real and fake faces, and thus teaching the other to create more realistic faces along the way. The final result of the prompt is the first face the second network can discriminate between real or fake. You may have come across some articles on the web saying that, according to a scientific research, many people can tell the difference between real faces and fake ones generated by state-of-the-art AI software. I haven't had the chance to read said paper, so I'm going to assume the results are correct. But like most of you, I've been exposed to hundreds of artificially created images as of today, and what they have in common is a lack of complex skin texture. What I mean by that is that most fake faces have fairly irregular skin. Some have an acceptable amount of detail, but I have never come across a face with such an astounding number and conspicuousness of wrinkles. The other glaring element is the almost leathery quality of the skin in this picture. This skin, whether real or not, presents signs of prolonged exposure to atmospheric elements, which I don't think AI is yet capable of creating from scratch. This first element observed poses sufficient reason to think that a photo editing work is more plausible than artificial intelligence. I suppose the best way to proceed is to look at face ratios. Given that the subject in the photo under scrutiny is undeniably a male specimen, I think the best frame of reference would be a human male with some skin texture as well. Here's a senior gentleman with a stern expression whose face I'm going to use for comparison. I've resized the man's photo so that the eyes and the mouth correspond to the alleged hominoid, then drawn some blue lines for the man's head, top, eyes, nose, mouth, and chin. Guess what? They all match except for one thing: the nose. Here's a red line for the creature's nose. There is a significant mismatch between the two. Since one comparison could be prone to criticisms and objections regarding measuring errors, I provide two more. Here's the second, and here's the third. The same exact anomalous ratios are evident in all three. I've drawn double-headed arrows in the first comparison to measure the distance between mouth and nose for both subjects, then copied and pasted them on the other two comparisons. The yellow arrow is a perfect match on all three men. Then I took the two arrows, grouped them, and resized them together so that the proportion is unaltered. The purple arrow is 32.8% bigger than the yellow arrow. When I previously mentioned the adversarial networks used for face generation in AI software, I omitted a detail. The databases of faces is obviously populated by human faces. According to anthropometry, which is the science that deals with measuring the human body and its components, human faces have fixed ratios when it comes to longitudinal distance between the sensory organs. This means that somewhere in our DNA there is information pertaining to the specific proportions that characterize our species. How could a software that doesn't have a conceptual understanding of what human faces are, and whose mere procedural duties are to mix and match real human faces to produce fake ones, generate a photographically hyper-realistic face of a humanoid primate it has absolutely no database entries of and reference to? And we've only verified so far the facial ratios. We will look at more morphological details along the video. I suppose the only plausible but extremely unlikely explanation could be that an AI software was designed and developed specifically to create fake Sasquatch faces. Why do I consider it extremely unlikely? Because if such a software existed, the web would be flooded with realistic Sasquatch faces by now. And it's not. Another significant aspect to consider is that creating this kind of software would not be a trivial task, and therefore it would require a team of developers, and I don't see any plausible financial motivation for a business venture of this magnitude. At this point, the AI hypothesis is even less tenable, and I consider the photo editing job far more plausible. I will now examine different morphological aspects of the subject in the photo and leave the critique and speculation for the next section. Let's begin with the eyes. I've picked this photo of two men next to each other for comparison. What do you notice? After a brief moment of active observation, anyone can see that there's a lot less white in the subject's eyes than the two men above. Even if we use another set of human eyes, for instance with this woman, it's easy to appreciate the higher portion of white in the human eye than in the subject. The other meaningful trait in the alleged creature's eyes is the apparent lack of an iris. If I were to assume for a moment that this is indeed a biological entity, instead of the product of sophisticated photo manipulation, and make a guess, I would say that the pupils are much bigger than in humans, and the iris much smaller. Let's move on to the nose. Here we are confronted with another anomaly. The subject's nose has nothing in common with the nose of higher primates like gorillas or chimpanzees. It is by all means a protruding human nose, but a very flat one. It's not possible to measure or estimate how protruding it is due to the lack of perspective in the photo, but both the dorsum and the tip look very flat. I would say this presents all the hallmarks and general morphology of a Homo sapiens nose, but with a significantly smaller outward projection. There is not yet a scientific consensus as to why the human olfactory organ has evolved to be so different from those of great apes, but at least one of the reasons seems to be that it followed the modification of the cranial structure caused by a change in diet. We didn't need powerful jaws for mastication anymore, and the progressive thinning of the skull structure contributed to the nose moving forward. This is an interesting aspect when considering the shape of this creature's head. It's quite large and with a very conspicuous sagittal crest, the well-known conical head so frequent in eyewitness accounts and in alleged photo and video media. The sagittal crest is present in many species, not only within the order of primates, and it serves the purpose of anchoring strong jaw muscles necessary for chewing hard foods. Also, it's not very visible in this photo, but there is a protruding brow ridge. Next, let's look at the hair. What are the most noticeable aspects of the subject's hair, in your opinion? Well, to me, first of all, the definition. My general impression, and last nail in the coffin of the AI-generated image hypothesis, is that this hair is not as defined as a modern digital photo camera would allow for an expert photographer to capture given good light and a still subject, but it is as defined as an old photo camera would. It is extremely realistic, detailed, with subtle hue variations and lifelike effects of lights and shadows. The inability of AI as of today to create photorealistic hair is a well-known fact among both professionals and the general public. When it comes to paranormal and cryptozoology, the attempts to generate realistic-looking cryptids with AI have produced either poor or downright embarrassing results. So much that, at least for what I do in this channel, the hair is the #1 tip-off to understand if I'm looking at a fake image. I am willing to change my mind and admit the error if someone can generate a Sasquatch face with this level of realism through artificial intelligence. But until then, I am quite confident in discarding that hypothesis completely. Our hair examination would not be complete without at least mentioning the coloration. I would call this a reddish brown, which could sound like an irrelevant fact in and of itself, but please keep it in mind because it will be important later on in the video. Last but not least, let's delve deeper into the skin topic. I've already expounded the extreme complexity of the subject's skin, and I'm going to add here that the imperfections are absolutely asymmetrical, which is an ulterior element of realism. But there are two more features which may escape a less vigilant observer. Do you notice anything strange about this creature's wrinkles? I do. I notice two critical details that move this face further away from regular human facial morphology. I've prepared a tableau of 8 seniors, 4 males and 4 females, to illustrate my findings. First of all, I didn't pick all serious expressions for a doom and gloom party, but because it's best to compare faces with a similar expression to that of the subject in question. Second, these ladies and gentlemen are all beautiful, and if they ever come across this video, I hope they will forgive me for using their faces just to highlight skin imperfections, and appreciate the fact that I do it for what I deem to be a scientific inquiry. The first thing I notice is something missing. Despite variability in size and depth and shape, all humans develop minor wrinkles under the eyes due to age, but also a major fold under each eye. As you can see, all our human subjects in the tableau have these major folds under their eyes, but our alleged Sasquatch doesn't. The other major difference I notice is with the big folds on the sides of the nose, technically and scientifically referred to as nasolabial folds, or as smile lines colloquially. Once again, they present minor variations in depth and details, but they have a very specific pattern in humans, going down to the sides of the mouth with a small outwards curve. The subject in the photo, under scrutiny, has very distinct folds at the sides of the nose, but they don't even get close to the mouth, and they make a much more pronounced curve outwards, just below the nostrils. Once again, I can only speculate on the reason for such morphological differences. If this is indeed a biological specimen of an unknown hominoid primate species, it is quite possible that these major folds are the result of both a different cranial structure and of a different range of facial expressions. For instance, a different way of smiling that doesn't involve the eye muscles as much as with Homo sapiens. I would like to take the chance to ask you for a very small favor. These videos require quite a bit of effort, and if you enjoy them, it would help me tremendously in keep making them if you could show some love by pushing the like button and subscribing to the channel. An even bigger help would be to share this video on one or more platforms of your choice. I believe cryptozoology is in dire need of a concerted effort to foster awareness, and only by drawing the general public's attention to the objective evidence of undiscovered species on this planet can they finally come out of the metaphorical shadows. Alright, it's almost time to put all the results together, but we need to look at one more important issue first. This won't take long, but I thought the lighting in the image deserved its own section. What do you notice about the light in this photo? My general assessment would be that the lights and shadows are a bit sharp, and therefore this photo, whether entirely or partially real, was taken neither at dawn or at dusk. The sun was shining bright, and this is the direction from which the sun rays hit the subject, and the foliage it was hiding among. I would say the sun was at the 1:30 or 2 o'clock of the subject, and some leaves in front of it cast their shadow on its head, both on the top and on the sides. The light illuminating the face is somewhat softer, which could mean it was secondary light reflected on the surface of the foliage and cast on the face with less intensity, whereas the leaves in the front, on our right and on the subject's left, are a lot less illuminated and obviously not the focal area of the photo camera. The reason why I say this is that I have looked a lot at this image and I could not find a single detail that reveals any kind of photo composition. I am very confident that this light is not generated by a computer, which of course is a redundant commentary since I have already dismissed the AI hypothesis, but I'm also very confident in saying that this head belongs to a real biological entity. The only thing I am fairly confident but not entirely certain of is that the lighting on the face is real. This leaves the possibility of a photo editing job involving a face composited with this head still open. I am not a professional photographer and neither a professional photo editor. I have routinely used Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer, two worthy competitors, in my opinion at least, of Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, for photo manipulation and vector design for almost a decade by now, and more intensely after I studied StrangeSpotting, so I suppose amateur visual designer would be more appropriate. One thing I have experienced directly and can state without fear of rebuttal is that when working on a compositing project, each new element added to the mix increases the complexity of the project and therefore the probability of error. We can look at this picture from a holistic perspective and from a mechanical one. We can judge its plausibility both from its parts and from the sum of its parts. If I look at it holistically, I can say that this seems to me like a real biological creature with morphological traits that indicate an evolutionary proximity to Homo sapiens, much closer than that of the great apes. I would say that we and this creature share a common ancestor, and that the evolutionary split or speciation happened more recently than those that distance us from the Pongo genus first, from the gorilla genus next, and from the Pan genus last. This creature has many human features, but enough differences to at least speculate that it belongs to the genus Homo, but is an entirely different species, or that it belongs to an entirely different and as of yet unknown genus. This of course is just speculation on my part and a subjective impression or opinion, if you will. It doesn't conclusively answer the fundamental question regarding this photograph being real or not. Luckily, splitting it into parts does. I will list the single details that are not consistent with the photo editing or photo compositing hypothesis. The first, most important detail is the head. There is no primate with this specific morphology of the head. Chimps don't have conical heads at all. Orangutans do a little bit, but it has nothing in common with the subject's head. Gorillas are the only ape species with a markedly conical head shape, but it looks completely different from our alleged creature's head. Besides, and here the hair color, as I said before, takes a much more important connotation, none of the species mentioned so far has this hair color. In other words, there is absolutely zero chance that someone took the head of a primate and made it look reddish-brown through color correction. This would have to be created from scratch, and we've already established that AI cannot create such photorealistic hair and lighting. This alone would be enough to conclude the analysis, but there are even more reasons to assert that this is a real creature. The fundamental question we need to ask ourselves is the following, and forgive me if it's a very long one. What are the probabilities of a photo editor creating a composition with a fake head and a human face, with the former having photorealistic hair, a conical shape on the top, a protruding brow ridge and great width, and the latter being so heavily manipulated to alter the facial proportions, removing existing major folds and adding both a great amount of small wrinkles and two major nasolabial folds that do not exist in humans with this pattern, making the nose look flatter than normal, making the eyes look entirely different from normal human eyes, with no iris, bigger pupils and less sclera, changing the skin color and texture to give it a leather-like appearance without leaving any detectable sign of forgery. They are next to zero. If we add to that the extremely realistic lighting and vegetation throughout the entire picture and a hyper-realistic red tone typical of old photo paper and pigments chemical degradation, and the probabilities are unequivocally non-existent. Due to all these reasons, my verdict is that the arbitrarily named Bigfoot mugshot photo is a real photo of a real undiscovered hominoid species inhabiting an undisclosed area, taken with a film camera at a date impossible to determine, but far enough in the past to produce the aforementioned chemical degradation and relative red tint. A few words before ending this video. I can only speculate as to how this picture came into existence and how it reached the infosphere. My theory is that the person who took it had already had previous encounters with Sasquatch and had meticulously planned the shot in question. They had already decided on what aperture and shutter speed to use and how to behave to make the creature feel unthreatened for the time needed to take the shot. The reason why the author of this phenomenal piece of evidence has never come forward is not so clear, but I theorize that either they kept it hidden for decades and finally decided to release it to see how the world would react to it, or someone did it for them, with or without their consent. I wouldn't bet on this being the only photo of a Bigfoot face in existence, but at least to my knowledge, it is the first and only one made available to the public. I would like to thank you for watching this video. If it tickled your curiosity about the possible existence of undiscovered creatures in this world, you might be interested in this other video where I scrutinize a famous piece of footage and provide an assessment about whether or not the subject is human. Have a great day and see you in the next one.